Okay, so again with some of these welding techniques, if you've seen in the last video, I put bevels on the end of the pipes and on the edges of my caps. So when I laid this weld in, I didn't have to grind a ton of material off. One way or another, I'm gonna have to do a ton of grinding. So I decided I would rather spend time over at the bench grinder with my vice grips, feeding it into the wheel, than over here having to clamp everything down, rotate it, clamp it, rotate it, clamp it, grind, shooting sparks all over the brand new expensive equipment. And it's just, you're gonna have to pay one way or another. So try to make life as easy as possible. And now I'm about to weld this flat stock onto the top here. And with most HSS, aluminum is a little bit different, but with most steel HSS, iron HSS, mild steel HSS, you have this these round edges on the sides here, and depending on the wall thickness, sometimes that radius can be a little bit shorter. With this 1/4 inch stuff here, pretty heavy wall, I think that's just from bending the material is why the radius is so long, ends up being so long. And you wind up with these large gaps, which is perfect for filling your weld into. One of my weld tests I actually had some time ago, I was set up with 2 pieces of 4-inch 1/4 inch wall, 4x4 by 1/4 inch wall, pieces of tubing, and one of the parts of my weld test was to fill this in. So, you know, it's a bit of a trick. You never know what the guy's going to give you when you go in for a weld test. Typically, I would cheat in a situation like this, and I would grab a stick rod and I would snap all the flux off the stick rod, lay that in here, and then I would turn my welder up pretty high. You know, this would work best in what would you call it? Metal core wire feed with a very high voltage, and I would just weld over that rod to be able to fill this in one pass. Otherwise, this would be a 3-pass situation. You would lay your first weld in, and then another one on the side, and then another one on this side, kind of lapping them slightly. So the guy knew I could weld. I didn't want to do my cheat trick, so I got a little bit nervous. I wasn't paying, I wasn't thinking straightly, so I just tried to crank my wire feed and try to fill it in one pass with this large swath, and then ended up having a concave weld. And I looked at him and I'm like, that's not how I wanted that to happen. And he's like, don't worry about it. I know you know what you're doing just from other things here. So yeah, I guess in that situation I should have asked him how exactly he wanted me to go about doing this. And you know, the production shops are pretty forgiving. They you know, a lot of the procedures like downhand, which you're really not supposed to do, are common practice. So you don't stress out too much going into your weld tests. Just be clear and ask them what their intent is and what they want, and you know, don't let them try to trick you.